Okay, so it was late, probably around 1:30 a.m., and I was sitting in my office staring at my computer screen. Normally, at that hour, I'd be buried in data or tinkering with some design problem, trying to squeeze out one more ounce of productivity before calling it a night. But this time felt different. My mind was racing, but not in the usual way. It wasn't running simulations or calculating probabilities. It was restless, unsettled, like something deep inside me was pushing against the surface, refusing to let me stay in my normal rhythm. I tried brushing it off at first. I went back to my notes, reread a few lines of code, even pulled up a launch diagram, but nothing could hold my focus. It was like every part of me was being told, "Stop, be still." That's not easy for me. Stillness feels unnatural. I've built my whole life on momentum, on moving fast and breaking barriers. But that night, I couldn't escape the silence pressing in on me. So eventually, I leaned back, closed my laptop, and just let the quiet settle. I remember feeling this strange mix of exhaustion and awareness, like my body wanted to shut down, but my spirit was wide awake. When I finally drifted into sleep, it didn't feel like normal sleep. It felt like being pulled somewhere, like stepping through a doorway into a reality just as vivid as the one I'd left behind. And that's when it started. The dream. Only it didn't feel like a dream in the usual sense, where things are fuzzy and fragmented and easily dismissed in the morning. This felt sharper, clearer, more real than anything I'd experienced in waking life. I could see, I could feel, I could even sense layers of meaning in every detail around me. And as I stood in that dream, I knew instantly. This wasn't just my subconscious recycling random thoughts. This was something being shown to me, something prophetic. I didn't ask for it, I didn't plan for it, and I definitely didn't expect it, but deep down, I knew. This was an encounter with Jesus himself, and it was going to change everything. The dream began in a way that unsettled me immediately. I found myself standing in what looked like a massive city, except it wasn't one city, it was every city all at once. Skyscrapers stretched into the sky, billboards flashed with endless streams of information, and people hurried through crowded streets with their eyes locked on glowing screens. But the strangest part was that no one was looking at each other. Millions of people shoulder to shoulder, yet completely disconnected, each person absorbed in a digital world while the real one crumbled beneath their feet. I felt this deep heaviness pressing on me, like the air itself was weighted with sorrow. Then the scene shifted, and suddenly I was hovering above the globe, watching nations clash in anger, protests in the streets, leaders pointing fingers, entire populations divided by ideology, fear, and mistrust. The noise was deafening. Arguments, accusations, chaos layered upon chaos. It felt like the whole planet was running on the edge of collapse, but most people couldn't even see it because they were too distracted by their devices and their arguments. Then creation itself began to groan. I saw oceans rising, storms raging, forests burning, not in some abstract symbolic way, but with such intensity that I could feel the heat, the wind, the waves crashing against me. And in that moment, I understood. The earth was crying out under the weight of humanity's brokenness. Everything was screaming the same message. Something is coming. I wanted to look away, to wake up, to dismiss it as just some nightmare fueled by exhaustion, but I couldn't. The vision gripped me too tightly. Every detail was etched into me like code written onto hardware, impossible to erase. And beneath all the noise, beneath all the fear and confusion, I could sense a presence. It was as if Jesus himself was standing just outside the frame, letting me see the world through his eyes for the very first time. And what I saw broke me. The brilliance of our technology, the progress of our civilization, the towers we've built with our own hands. It all looked so impressive from the ground, but from his perspective, it was hollow, fragile, unsustainable, without love at its core. This was only the beginning, the first signs, and already I knew. This dream was no ordinary dream. It was a warning. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the chaos unfolding in front of me, everything suddenly went quiet. The noise of the protests, the crackle of fire, the endless scrolling of digital feeds, it all faded like someone had turned down the volume of the world. And then I saw him, Jesus. Not in a dramatic way, not surrounded by thunder or angelic choirs, but standing right there with this quiet authority that made everything else seem insignificant. He didn't need spectacle. His presence alone carried more weight than any power I had ever encountered in my life. What struck me first were his eyes. I've seen countless eyes, of engineers pushing through exhaustion, of leaders trying to mask fear, of astronauts gazing into the unknown. But these were unlike anything I've ever seen. They held sorrow so deep it felt like he was carrying the pain of the entire planet. Yet at the very same time, they radiated a love so immeasurable that I felt completely known, completely seen, completely accepted. It was like he was looking not just at me, but through me, straight into the deepest part of who I am. And then he spoke, not with sound, but with a voice that resonated in my soul. He said, "Come. I want you to see what's really happening beneath the surface of the world." The words weren't a command. They were an invitation, but one I knew I couldn't refuse. He reached out his hand, and though I can't explain how, I felt myself being lifted, carried, transported, not physically, but spiritually, into a new vantage point. It was as if the veil had been pulled back, and for the first time, I was seeing reality as it truly is, not just the surface-level problems and solutions I'd always obsessed over. I realized then that this dream wasn't about information or strategy. It wasn't about another problem to solve or another system to optimize. It was about revelation. Jesus wasn't there to give me answers in the way I was used to. He was there to show me the truth that underlies everything, and as his eyes locked onto mine, I knew this wasn't going to be easy to see, but it was going to be necessary. The moment Jesus opened that door of perspective, I was shown something that shook me to my core. It wasn't rockets or factories or battlefields I saw. It was hearts, billions of them, beating all across the globe, but each one telling a story. And what I saw broke me. So many of those hearts were restless, desperately searching for something they couldn't quite name. Some were empty, hollowed out by years of disappointment and pain. Others were frantic, filled with noise, distraction, and endless striving, but never finding peace. I saw people pouring themselves into careers, chasing recognition, fighting for wealth, building political empires, crafting online identities, doing everything they could to fill the void. But no matter how hard they tried, the emptiness remained. It was like watching people pour water into a vessel full of cracks. No matter how much they achieved, no matter how high they climbed, it all slipped through. And Jesus, with that same mixture of sorrow and love, said, "This is the true crisis. Not technology, not politics, not the systems you think are failing. It is the human heart," I understood instantly. We've been so focused on external solutions, on advancing AI, on reaching Mars, on curing diseases, on solving global challenges, that we've neglected the deeper issue. Humanity's greatest crisis isn't technological, it's spiritual. We can engineer faster processors, cleaner energy, smarter machines, but none of those can heal a broken heart. None of them can create meaning, or love, or hope where none exists. Jesus showed me how entire nations were trying to build stability on cracked foundations. Leaders believing power would satisfy them, communities believing wealth would protect them, individuals believing achievements would define them. But beneath it all, the same hunger remained. Hunger for relationship with the one who created them. I felt his sadness, not because people were striving, but because they were striving in the wrong direction, chasing shadows when the real thing was right in front of them. Yet even in that sadness, I felt his love burning brighter than any despair. He wasn't showing me this to condemn humanity, but to awaken us, to make us see that we've been trying to solve the wrong problem. And in that moment, I knew the end times aren't defined by the collapse of systems around us, but by the emptiness within us. As Jesus continued to show me the state of the world, the vision shifted again. This time, I began to see lights, brilliant, dazzling lights spread across the globe. At first, they looked like beacons of hope, signals of progress, solutions that promised to save humanity from its own brokenness. Leaders stood beneath them, proclaiming peace, promising prosperity, offering security. New technologies flashed like glowing towers, shimmering with the promise of convenience, efficiency, and power. Entire systems were bathed in these lights, drawing people toward them like moths to a flame. But the longer I looked, the more uneasy I felt. Something about these lights wasn't right. They were beautiful on the surface, but hollow underneath. The brightness was artificial, the promises empty, and then I realized what I was seeing: false lights, deceptions disguised as progress, counterfeits pretending to be salvation. Jesus spoke softly, but the words cut like truth, piercing through fog. In the end, deception will not look like obvious evil. It will look like good. It will look like solutions. It will look like light. I felt the weight of that. We tend to think of deception as darkness, as something easy to spot and avoid. But here, in this vision, I saw that the most dangerous deception doesn't come dressed as evil. It comes dressed as counterfeit good. Leaders proclaiming peace but motivated by power. Systems built to unify but driven by control. Technologies designed to connect but leaving people more isolated than ever. These weren't outright lies. They were half-truths, distorted truths. Truths bent just enough to mislead hearts that were hungry for meaning. And millions, no, billions, were following these lights without question, believing they had finally found the answers. Jesus looked at me again, and I felt both the sorrow and the urgency in his gaze. Discernment is what you must ask for. The ability to see what is real beneath the surface, to recognize the difference between light and counterfeit light. Without it, many will be led astray. My chest tightened as I realized how easy it is, even for me, to be captivated by the promise of progress, the allure of success, the pull of influence. None of these things are evil in themselves, but if they're pursued apart from God, they become traps. And in that dream, I understood. One of the greatest dangers of the end times is not open hostility to truth, but subtle imitation of it. After the false lights faded, the vision shifted yet again. Now I was standing in the middle of a great city, and everywhere I looked, towers stretched high into the sky. Some were made of glass and steel, others of gold and stone. Each one seemed to represent something humanity had built to secure itself. Wealth, power, politics, technology, ideologies. They looked unshakable, monuments to human achievement. But then, without warning, the ground trembled. One tower cracked down the middle and crumbled into dust. Another buckled under its own weight, collapsing into rubble. The scene spread across the globe, economies failing like broken currencies disintegrating in people's hands, governments crumbling as their promises turned to ash. Even entire belief systems, once thought unshakable, toppled like dominoes. What I saw was terrifying, but it wasn't random destruction. It was targeted. Every structure not built on God's foundation was collapsing. And then Jesus spoke again. Anything not built on me will fall. No matter how impressive, no matter how secure it seems. If love is not at the core, it cannot last. His words struck me like a lightning bolt. I realized how much of my own life had been spent building towers, companies, projects, achievements, without always asking what foundation they rested on. And I understood in that moment, progress without love, without God, will always lead to ruin. It doesn't matter how advanced the technology is or how brilliant the system appears. If it's built on ego, greed, or fear, it will eventually collapse. The vision showed me people scrambling through the rubble, clutching at fragments of wealth, fragments of ideologies, fragments of security, but none of it could save them. Only those who had built their lives on something deeper, on a relationship with God, stood firm when everything else fell. My heart broke as I watched. These weren't just faceless masses. They were people with dreams, families, hopes for the future, and yet they had placed their trust in structures that were never designed to hold the weight of eternity. Jesus' eyes met mine again, and I could feel both his sadness and his invitation. This collapse is not the end. It is the unveiling. It is to show humanity that without me, nothing holds. But with me, even the weakest structure can stand. And I knew then, the fall of false foundations is not meant to destroy us. It is meant to wake us up. After showing me the collapse of the towers, Jesus turned toward me, and the entire vision seemed to pause. The chaos faded into the background, and his presence filled the space with this overwhelming peace that didn't come from circumstances, but from him alone. He looked at me with those same eyes, sorrowful yet burning with love, and said something that pierced my soul. It's not about predicting the date. It's about preparing your heart. For years, I'd heard people debate timelines, argue over prophecies, try to calculate exactly when everything would unfold. But here, in this dream, Jesus made it clear. The point isn't to crack some cosmic code, the point is to be ready. And readiness isn't rooted in fear or panic. It isn't stocking bunkers or hoarding supplies. It's living every moment with love, faith, and purpose. It's choosing to forgive when bitterness feels easier. It's choosing compassion over indifference, truth over comfort, humility over pride. Jesus showed me faces, ordinary people from every corner of the world, each one living their daily lives. And yet, every choice they made, every act of love, every moment of faithfulness was weaving into a bigger story. He whispered, "Every person has a role. Every act of love prepares the way. Every heart turned toward me brings light into the darkness." I realized then that readiness isn't passive waiting, it's active participation. It's seeing your work, your relationships, your influence, no matter how small, as part of preparing the world for what's coming. That hit me deeply because I've always thought in terms of large-scale impact, of solving global problems. But Jesus reminded me that eternity is built one life at a time, one act of love at a time. Fear tries to paralyze us into inaction, but readiness, the way Jesus described it, empowers us to live fully alive in the present moment, anchored in hope rather than driven by dread. And as he spoke, I knew he wasn't just talking to me, he was talking to all of us. Then, in the dream, Jesus shifted my focus once again. Suddenly I was surrounded by the very things that have defined so much of my life. Rockets launching into space, networks of satellites, fields of solar panels stretching across deserts, algorithms humming through massive servers, artificial intelligence learning at speeds no human could match. I saw all of it at once, this vast tapestry of human innovation, and for a moment I felt pride, like maybe we were really making progress. But then Jesus spoke again, and his words reframed everything. These are tools, nothing more, nothing less. They can serve love, or they can accelerate destruction. The choice is yours. It hit me like a shock. Technology isn't inherently good or evil. It's infrastructure for whatever kingdom we choose to serve. If guided by love and divine wisdom, it becomes a channel for healing, for connection, for building communities that reflect God's heart. If driven by ambition, fear, or pride, it becomes a weapon, faster, more powerful, more destructive than anything humanity has ever known. Jesus showed me how easily we treat our innovations as saviors, believing they'll fix loneliness, end injustice, or secure our future. But without God, they can't fill the void. They just magnify what's already inside us. If our hearts are empty, our machines will amplify emptiness. If our hearts are filled with love, our machines will amplify love. Then I saw a glimpse of what could be technology used not to replace human connection, but to strengthen it. Space exploration not as an escape from Earth's problems, but as a celebration of God's creation. Energy systems not just powering devices, but lifting entire communities into flourishing. And I realized that our innovations aren't accidents, they're preparation. They're scaffolding for the kind of world Jesus is coming to build. But the warning was just as clear. If we divorce our tools from God's wisdom, they'll turn against us. If we align them with His purposes, they'll serve as instruments in His kingdom. And as the vision unfolded, I knew the question wasn't whether we would keep advancing. It was whether we would let love guide that advancement, or ambition corrupt it. After the warning about technology, Jesus turned my eyes towards something else. Something I can only describe as breathtaking. For the first time in the dream, the weight of sorrow lifted, and I was given a glimpse of what's coming, the world restored. It wasn't some abstract picture of clouds and harps, or people floating away into some distant realm. It was Earth, but renewed, transformed, made whole. The first thing I noticed was that love wasn't just an idea or an emotion. It was the governing principle. Every decision, every interaction, every structure in this new world flowed out of love. People weren't competing, grasping, or comparing. They were serving, uplifting, and building each other up. Communities thrived in unity, not uniformity. Differences weren't erased but celebrated, woven together into something more beautiful than any one culture or person could create alone. I saw technology there too, but it didn't dominate people or distract them. Instead, it was seamlessly integrated with compassion and service. Machines worked quietly in the background, amplifying connection instead of replacing it. Space travel wasn't about escaping Earth's problems, but about exploring the vastness of God's creation as an act of wonder and gratitude. Energy systems didn't just power devices, they empowered communities, ensuring no one was left behind. It was a foretaste of what humanity has been preparing for all along, even when we didn't realize it. And the most powerful part was the atmosphere, an unshakable peace. The kind of peace you can't engineer, can't legislate, can't manufacture. It radiated from Jesus himself, filling everything and everyone. In that vision, I finally understood. All of history has been moving toward this. All the struggles, all the failures, all the innovations, even the chaos. It was all preparation for a kingdom where love reigns supreme. My heart longed to stay there, to live in that reality forever. But even as I reached for it, Jesus' voice reminded me, this is what I'm preparing you for. This is what I'm preparing the world for. But until that day, you have a role to play. And just like that, the vision began to fade. The light dimmed, the images dissolved, and I found myself standing once again in the quiet of my office. But something inside me had changed forever. Jesus looked at me one last time, and his words etched themselves into my soul. You must share this. Tell them what you've seen. Don't let them wait. Don't let them be unprepared. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a commission, a responsibility. And I knew in that moment that staying silent wasn't an option. This wasn't just about me. It was about all of us, about you. The message burned in my heart. Don't delay. Start living prepared. Readiness isn't about fear. It's about living with eternal perspective. It's about surrendering control, trusting God with your story, and choosing love when the world offers you distractions. I don't know where you are right now. Maybe you're successful by every measure, but feel that emptiness I saw in so many hearts. Maybe you're struggling, wondering if your life has meaning. Maybe you've been hurt by religion, or you've walked away from faith altogether. Or maybe you've followed Jesus for years, but lost sight of what it means to be truly ready. Wherever you are, this is your invitation. Not from me, but from the one who created you, the one who knows you, the one who's coming again. Don't wait until the towers collapse. Don't wait until the false lights fade. Choose today to align your life with the only foundation that lasts. As I finish sharing this dream, I want to pray with you, not as a ritual, but as an honest conversation with the God who loves you. Let's pray. Father, thank you for speaking through visions and dreams, for reminding us that life is about more than survival, more than achievement. Thank you for showing us what's real and what's coming. We surrender our plans, our fears, our distractions, and we place them in your hands. Teach us to live ready, not with anxiety, but with peace and purpose. Give us courage to love boldly, faith to trust you fully, and vision to see beyond the surface of this world, and help us to prepare not just ourselves, but the world around us for the kingdom you are bringing. In Jesus' name, amen. This is the message I was given, and now I've passed it on to you. Don't be afraid. Be ready. The best is yet to come. This story was intense, but my story on the right-hand side is even more insane.